it's the first thing I was taught by my grandmother, Koike Onalani. In fact, in the old ways, it is the first thing anyone is taught, the power of aloha.
Aloha, and welcome to Healers' Voices, the podcast that brings you the healing heartbeats of Maui and around the world. I'm your host, Jessica Brazil, and together we embark on a journey to explore the inspiring stories of individuals who are making a profound impact on both local and global levels. From the powerful healing of Maui, we are here to amplify the voices of healers, visionaries, and change makers. We believe in the transformative power of dialogue to chart a future where all life thrives, living in harmony with the natural world and embodying the spirit of aloha. We feature different thought leaders, teachers, and innovators, led by myself, Jessica Brazil. I have been in the healing arts and sciences for nearly 20 years, and I'm so incredibly blessed to have made contact with thousands of people making a difference in the world in a meaningful way. Today, we welcome Keone Hanalei, our special guest of Pōhala. He is the founder and innovator of this Hawaiian Fern Medicine. We will learn from him. One of my intentions in terms of the innovation, it was let's interview some of these incredible teachers and leaders and highly creative beings who are in my field of awareness within our arm's stretch reach, and have a conversation where we can learn from one another. We can expand our awareness of how we understand making a difference, how we understand healing and expansion and growth. And boy, we sure went into a lot of changes as a collective in the last few years. But to tell you the truth, 2019, I felt it really strong before we went into 2020 and 2021. So it wasn't as big of a adjustment from my experience. But a lot of our brothers and sisters and family friends have been experiencing a lot of change, and the Hawaiian culture and your practice of and lineage of teaching with Pōhala and the Fern Medicine and emotional health and intelligence has been so aligned with my journey the past 20 years in social work, mental health, and just working to strengthen and create healthier communities. I actually started with my father, who built affordable housing and built community in that way. And so it was interesting as he transitioned in 2021 or 2020 to see his creation continue being built. That's a legacy, right? That I drive by every day. Workforce housing is, growing as he's already transitioned. And what a beautiful way with this technology to be able to record something and it to continue to live on beyond this moment. And somebody may access it in a week or year or 2 years, and it give them that medicine that really speaks to their soul. So I just wanted to invite you. You've been close to my journey in this healing arts and expansion. Like I said, I have some of your ferns right at my desk, and occasionally they speak up and say, hey, this might be helpful for this client or coworker, and I gift it often. And so just super thrilled to have this connection and to have you here. And so tell us, those of us who might be listening that aren't familiar with you, maybe aren't familiar with this at all, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came into this journey with Hawaiian Ferns?
Yes, thank you, Sister Jessica, and mahalo for this invitation. It's such an honor to share with this lahui, with this community. My name is Keone Hanalei. And one thing that I love to share when I introduce myself is that something unique about my upbringing is that I was of one of the last truly hanai of the ritual known as hanai. And hanai means a type of adoption, but it's not just a type of adoption, really. It's when someone brings you into their field, their being, in order for you to become the record keeper of a mo'okuauhau, of a lineage. And so my grandmother, Kauiki'ona Lani, she hanai'd me. So upon birth, I was offered to my grandmother. And for the first 5 years of my life, I was just becoming indoctrinated into the knowledge, the ike, of my ohana's mo'okuauhau, our lineage. And so, of course, with that comes great kuleana, responsibility. And so a big part of my kiakahi, or my purpose as a sovereign being, is to really express and translate everything that I learned with my grandmother about my mo'okuauhau. And fern medicine, or pu'a ehu ehu, is really a huge component of what I was taught. My grandmother learned from hers and so forth and so on, all the way to 18,000 BC, to our relative known as Mahat. And Mahat is the one who resurrected Pu'a Ehu Ehu Fern Medicine. So you spoke of legacy, and I love when we can have these discussions about legacy and enliven legacy. This is really the legacy of Mahat, and it's a succession of this knowledge. And this knowledge is always offered as a contribution. And, one thing about many lineages that I feel is a little inaccurate is that things are to be secret. And even in modern Hawaiian culture, we have the kapu and the huna, but that's what many people don't know, is that is a very modern construct. So I am here to be uanoa, to be wide and free, to share everything that I learn from my kupuna, because I know that it's nourishment for our lahui, for our entire collective.
Thank you. That's so expansive, so beyond just a tincture sitting in front of me, right? It's like comes with a whole lineage of 18,000 BC. It comes all the way through that. And it sounds like a way of being that's shared from lineage in your lineage, and then you share with others. So thank you. You've had such courage to step out of this kapu and the forbidden land, right? That said, here's these areas that we don't step into, taboo, right? Our generation definitely has stretched the boundaries in how we define relationship, how we form agreements, gender identity, gender roles, sexual orientations, how we identify culture and ethnicity. And we've really just explored and expanded in that area quite a bit. And so I appreciate that this is coming up in this area. And I'm curious to learn a little bit more, as you've come into this medicine, a lot seems to be explained from this path, from how I've followed you in some of your social media, and the emotional intelligence, right? Different ferns represent different emotions, is the way, probably overly simplistic. Maybe you can speak a little bit to that, and how this fern and this lineage speaks to you as kind of the leader to the collective, or those who want to hear and receive, of how this can be beneficial, and how we can grow and expand our understanding of emotional alignment and intelligence in our own journey.
Yes, my sister, mahalo. As you said, Pu'a Ehu Ehu Fern Medicine is all about emotional intelligence. We have 103 native Hawaiian ferns that correlate to 103 human emotions. The significant thing about the human emotion, it's really our electrical experience. And in a world made of form and frequency, electricity is primary. It's how we really perceive this world. And we do that through our emotions. In today's world, because there is such a fixation on control. And you were speaking a little bit into that when, breaking out of kapu. Okay. So like no longer being in that field of conformity and suppression, no longer allowing things or oneself to be controlled, which has been incredibly taboo, kapu, for a long time. We live in a collective that is constructed of subordination.
Mm-hmm.
So now really understanding on a sovereign level, what is my electrical field? How do I perceive this phenomenal animate world based upon my electrical experience? And that's by way of the human emotion. The human emotion is a stimulant. It's a powerful stimulant. So I want to begin by saying that, the great question I get is, why ferns? Why? How did, of all the creations on earth, why are ferns really the record keepers of human emotions? Okay, so one thing that's really significant about the biological body of the fern, that sets it really apart from all other species, including you and I as human beings, is that ferns are the only known species, and I really want to stress that known, right? The only known species on this planet to have attained evolutionary stasis or homeostasis. Now, what that means in the linear construct, what that means is that the ferns have met their evolutionary ceiling. They are complete. They are completely evolved. And I just want to reference crystals and stone, which they themselves still go through magmatic changes to accommodate the shifts on this planet, but ferns do not. They have tested a fossil of a fern 180 million years ago. It is identical to the fern today. This is incomprehensible for us.
Mm-hmm.
So when we went through a Kali Yuga, right, as a collective, not just the humans, everything on Earth itself experienced the shift into a Kali Yuga. In Hawaiian, we say Po'apo. It's a spiritual dark age. Now, we didn't do anything wrong, you or I or humanity or any other species on the planet. No one did anything wrong. This is cyclical. When we work in linear, it's all about periodicity, about cycles. So this was meant to happen. However, in a spiritual dark age, there is a concern that the human emotion may somehow be mired by a dark age, somehow polluted and corrupted. So how do we ensure the preservation of its mana, of its life force, of its power? Because the human emotion, if we look on a collective level, it may be the kikahi, or the purpose of a collective. That's very significant. So how do we preserve the human emotion? Well, the ferns volunteered, because the ferns said, we have attained evolutionary stasis, which means we cannot become corrupt. In the transition of a spiritual dark age, nothing can pollute our field. Because the great thing about evolutionary stasis is, if you're already completely evolved, you're no longer required to accumulate data. And let's you and I just take that in for a second, because all the data that's swirling around in the mecha culture right now, it is overwhelming. And it's causing a great deal of confusion. So we can see how many people in their sovereign selves are becoming corrupted because of the inundation of data. The ferns are not inundated. They don't accumulate data. They are content with their sovereign knowing. It's sufficient, it's enough. And so they're holding the human emotion until the time is hemolele, as we say in the culture, and hemolele means perfect, until the time is hemolele, to be gifted back to the humans for true, honest integration and expression. And the fact that you and I are having this conversation right now, coinciding with a shift into the age of Aquarius, coinciding into a feminine shift, the time is hemolele.
Yes. And we can certainly see the discomfort of this shift, can't we? So, one of the things I really appreciate about being introduced to your lineage of teaching that is so refreshing is it was so relevant to the connection and relationship to nature itself, to the Aina, to our organic emotion, having my background in heavy emphasis in child development. um, Whenever an area along our journey in life gets missed in your teaching, you talk a lot about each of these different emotions having a really complete experience with them and reconnecting to our organic state of emotional experience, and giving ourselves permission even to be with our emotions as a form of wisdom that is communicating through us and to us and in alignment with nature. That to me is really at the core of any mind body spirit connection, is that
Mm,
it's very physical, but it's also so
mm,
spiritual and integrated. And so
mm.
it's really fascinating to me when you brought up the how the ferns expressed themselves to you for this year. And I'm curious to hear about that relationship that you have and how that comes through you. I know that that probably can't be fully explained, but maybe you can share just a little bit about how do you develop this relationship more deeply with the Aina, with the fern. And if somebody new, let's say to Hawaiian culture, to this relationship to themselves, and they want to grow, maybe what would one step forward in their lives be where they could connect to this a little more deeply?
Yeah, thank you for inviting this conversation. And there's something that's really important. My dialogue with Pua Ehu Ehu, with ferns, as is my dialogue with Honua, with Ki, with the planet itself, as is my dialogue to cosmic consciousness, requires a collapse of control. If you want to be clairvoyant, if you want to be telepathic, all the clairs, I like to call them all the clairs, you have got to surrender control. Because if control is an important and interesting aspect in your life, you're shut. It's
Mhm,
shut. And now a lot of the things that we perceive this world to be are all idealizations. And you
mhm,
were speaking a little bit into this because the emotion is meant to be embodied, not to be idealized.
mhm,
That's the problem. And that's why many people don't understand their emotions, because it's always through a process of idealizations. This is the conditioning of what grief is supposed to be. This is the conditioning of what euphoria is supposed to be. So it's always experienced out there. It's not
mhm,
embodied in the body. And so the body is not coded properly. And this is a cosmic machine. And my kupuna would always say this: the human avatar, the kino, the body, has the power to create or collapse a universe. This is our gift, and we are not resourcing and accessing it at its full potential in the slightest. And I always say, I don't even think we're using 1%,
oh
because
yes.
there's even certain dogmas and religions
Mhm,
that are greatly established in this collective that say we have to atone for having a body. So in other words, reject this, be disgusted and ashamed of this. The cosmic machine. Wow, that's unfortunate.
mhm. Because then we're surrendering to something external instead of internal that we're really deeply connecting to. So that's the way I like to envision it is the way you described it. This almost like we're when we look at the universe, looking up at the sky is a wonderful practice, or just to regularly look up. And when I first learned that we have this such an enormous number of cells in our body that for the feminine, it's not even able to count in science, right? Infinite, which is so, in the spiritual teachings, we understand, some of us understand that the nature of the feminine is infinite because it's space.
Mm,
So when we imagine, all those different stars, planets, that those are also reference points within us. They're not just out there, they're in here, and it's a reflection. That brings to me this concept that you share, aloha ma. Can
Mm.
you speak to that a little bit for those who are less familiar with the term and meaning?
Yes, mahalo. So aloha ma means self-reflective love. Now, in the medicine that I work with, not just pua ehu ehu, but the medicine of my lineage, we are taught that the first trauma is separation. And so a lot of us, our work here in this animate world is to resolve that. Just resolve it. And the best way to resolve that is through aloha ma, self-reflective love. And just like you're saying, there's this quest to find all the answers out there. And no matter how much we search and how much data we receive, it will never be enough. The hunger is insatiable until we makdas or huli hoi, as we say in the language, we do the epic reversal. And it's scary to face the self.
Mm-hmm.
It's scary to resurrect all the things that we've spent our entire lives hiding, right? Because a lot of the things that we find in here are not compatible to what the exterior conditions is telling us who we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to like, what our perception of life should be. It doesn't apply. And so those have been suppressed. And so in Aloha Ma, self-reflective love, we are doing the makdaso hui hoi, and we are resurrecting that. And I always call it like this, just to be kind of like realistic and not to like create a fantasy here. It's like resurrecting a nightmare. But here's the great thing about resurrecting the nightmare is once the nightmare is brought into light, we see that it's not as monstrous as we thought. It's actually quite friendly, generous, and most importantly, it's incredibly fair. It's fair.
Mm. The message I get from that is this surrender with the letting go of control is a surrender to this unknown that to trust on into this unknown, that it will be fair, that it will create some homeostasis, that the discomfort when the parts come up in us that we're not comfortable with, or the emotions in us that we're not comfortable with, that the richness of blessing and fullness and wholeness is this aloha ma, the self-reflective love that experience by accepting all of ourselves, including what you said, how infinitely unaware we are even of all the endlessness of what is within. And I find it fascinating. That's likely why I was drawn to mental health, because it is infinite of what we can perceive and how much we can sculpt by what we give our attention to our reality, and how much we neglect giving attention as a collective. We neglect giving that attention to ourselves, and we are, of course, very deserving of it. And it's perhaps one of the most important things that we can do is give ourselves that attention in a meaningful way.
And sister, I want to share, thank you, because you're speaking of the feminine as being infinite, and really, in the medicine to which I work in, we experience the feminine as that quantum field, which is aligned to that infinite space. And here's the thing about a quantum field is immune to control. You can't control it. So if you attempt to apply control into a quantum, you're basically rejecting that experience altogether. Now you're confined into a linear, and the linear is limited. I want to share this. The linear is very purposeful. It's because of the linear that you and I can build structures. A flower blooms because it aligns to the laws of the linear. You and I, we appear the way we do because we apply to the laws of the linear. but the linear can be very limiting. That's why we get to invite the generosity of the quantum field to be just as relevant and interesting as important as the linear.
Love that. Yeah. So powerful. And I know we can go, really deep with all of this. And I would say that'll be part two. For those who are just learning about this beautiful medicine and path, one of my experiences along the way was this importance of not just getting well, not just living well, but really truly living aloha. Can you speak a little bit about, for those who are less familiar with what aloha truly is, and if you were to define that word in some way that we can relate to, because it's so core to me in my understanding of this relationship to the fern and to Pōhala and aloha ma. Can you speak a little bit to how you
Yes.
explain that word to the less familiar?
Yes, most certainly. It's the first thing I was taught by my grandmother, Koike Onalani. In fact, in the old ways, it is the first thing anyone is taught, the power of aloha. Now, the way it was taught to me, which was the way it was taught to my grandmother, and so forth and so on, to Mahat, is aloha means literally aloha. It means face to face, face to face. And this comes in 3 tiers. Okay. First, I am face to face with the natural world. I do not look away. Second, I am face to face with my brothers and my sisters. I will know you well. And third, and most importantly, my kupuna, my elders would tell me, is you are face to face with yourself. You will know yourself the best. Because I'm an ambassador to this, and I have to teach people how to love me. I got to teach people how to respect me. I got to teach people how to honor me. We live in a collective right now where everything is based on assumptions. And a lot of our intimate relationships are built on just that. I will assume how to love you. I will assume what you like, what you don't like. How about we all just be clear? How about we all just teach one another how to truly love us? But first, we need to embody that. Because as we come to our brothers and our sisters and we say, okay, this is how you love me, they have every right to say in response, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? When it's embodied, guess what I get to say? You're looking at it. You're looking at the evidence.
That's powerful. Yeah. So where can we learn and how can we learn more from you? Do you have some events coming up that you'd like to share?
Sure. If you go to my website, pōhala.net, there is a link on there for upcoming workshops. Every month, I host virtual workshops. So anywhere around the world, you can join in. We really focus on, there's something that I do called the emotional series, where we focus on a fern and an emotion per month. And we as a lahui, as a collective, really begin to start the dialogue. What does this emotion mean to you, mean to me? What does the fern say about this emotion? How is this emotion practical? Let's pull it into our body. Let's code the body, the nervous system with this emotion. Let's enliven it. Let's make it electric. I also do in-person workshops in the Hawaiian Islands from time to time. Not always based on fern medicine. Oftentimes, it's also of some primordial movement and breathing that I was taught by my kupuna as well, called ulu. It's about really attuning the iwikuamo'o, the spinal cord. If there's anything for me to just leave with the audience, it's first mahalo. Thank you so much. And also, I want to share with you something about emotional intelligence, because not a lot of people really understand what this may mean. Now, emotional intelligence, one of the greatest definitions I've ever heard was from Dr. Joe Dispenza. And Dr. Joe Dispenza defines emotional intelligence as shortening the refractory period of an emotion, meaning we don't attach ourselves to an experience. When we attach ourselves to an experience is when we are delivered into trauma. Trauma. So shorten the refractory period of an electrical impulse. And I just want that to sit with people, because we have the skill to do that. And it's not about rejecting an experience. It's about allowing it to be assimilated and then moving forward. One of the greatest things I've ever heard is a memory free of an emotional attachment is called wisdom.
Mm. So that's why you see the laughing Buddha, right? The laughing Buddha nature.
Yeah.
That freedom to attachment, when we can laugh at ourselves, even when we're in the midst of ruin or some other
Right.
experience.
Right. My kupuna, my elders would say, this is a world without error. So
Right.
why not just enjoy?
Mm, yeah. Wow. Thank you. That's very powerful wisdom. And I can certainly relate to much of what you said when starting my journey with Mindful Living Group, when I felt that innovation coming through, and the magnetic field. It felt like a rocket ship moving into a whole nother frequency, like when you see them go into space, or experience of, wow, I'm creating something that's different from the norm. It's different from the mold, and it
Mm,
was very scary and uncomfortable, but just like you said, it's an experience, and thankfully had some tools to be able to not attach so much to that experience and that emotion. So that's a really incredible summary of everything that you're sharing. So thank you so much for joining.
Mahalo. Thank you to you, Jessica, and aloha ma to you all.
Aloha ma.
Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey through the heartbeats of healing. We hope that Healers Voices has filled your heart with inspiration and brought you closer to the spirit of aloha. As we conclude this episode, we invite you to continue this important conversation in your own life. Let these stories and insights resonate within you and inspire change in your own community and beyond. Remember, the power of healing is within all of us, and by working together, we can bring positive change to our world. Let's move forward with compassion, understanding, and a commitment to living in harmony with nature and one another. We'll be back with more incredible stories and voices of healing from Maui and around the world. Until then, please remember to follow and like us to support this continued raising of awareness, and continue practicing, embodying, and spreading the aloha spirit to make a difference in the world. Mahalo for listening to Healers Voices. We'll meet again soon.